Hey guys, this is Joe with Unity Code Tutorials. Welcome back. This is the second tutorial and we are going to actually get started on our game today. So if you haven't seen the first tutorial yet and are new to coding, I would suggest going back and watching the first tutorial. If you're not brand new to coding or if you've already watched it, welcome to the second tutorial. So today what we're going to do is actually get started on a project. The first project I'm going to make is going to be, let's say, a turret defense game, but we're going to add on to it and kind of make it our own as we go. As we continue to learn, we're going to add to this project, but we're going to start off very simply. So to get the models that we're going to need, we're going to go to the asset store, which if you don't already have the asset store open, go to this window tab here, and then if you go down here, you just click asset store. But I already have it here. And then what you want to do is you want to type in turret, just the word turret. Go ahead and search that, hit free only, free is good, and go down and here, this sci-fi simple gun turrets, you're going to click on that, and you're going to get a download link for it, which is right here. Now I've already imported it, but for you, it will say download right there. So go ahead and download that, import it. This is what it is. It's going to create a folder in your project, and it's going to have these prefabs, and that's what we're going to be using. Okay, so moving on. So what I want to do here is I want to make a turret rotatable by the keyboard. You're going to be able to rotate it, and you're going to be able to shoot a projectile from it. In the future, the very near future, we're going to create objects that will come after you, and you're going to have to shoot them. You know, a turret defense game. If you've ever played a turret defense game, that's what we're going to make. We're going to build on it, we're going to make it our own, but we're going to start with a simple turret. That's what this tutorial is about. So, let's get started. What do I need first? I'm in my main scene here. Let's see. I'll go ahead and actually create the game in my main scene, and then in a later tutorial I can always change scenes if I need to. But for now, this scene is going to work just fine for me. So I'm already in my main scene, and the reason I say that out loud is because I always like to think about, okay, what do I want to do and what scene do I want it to happen in. I like to create a different scene for different settings. So for example, the menu of the game will be one setting, and then different levels of the game will be different settings. So here we go. We're going to need a turret object. So I've already imported those, and I would suggest, if you haven't already, pause the video, import that package that I mentioned a bit ago, and then here we go. So once you import that package, you're going to have this folder here. You're going to open that folder, you're going to go in the prefabs folder, and you're going to see different turrets. So let's get the turret 1A. The purpose of the multiple turrets is so that your turret can level up and so on. We'll decide in the future if we want to use that. So go ahead and just grab this one here, drag it to the scene. I'm going to focus in on it here, just kind of check it out a little bit. This looks like a nice turret. So what we want to do is check it out. We're going to open the hierarchy. We're going to figure out what we need to rotate. So up here, you'll notice you have different options for rotating. No, that's for transforming. This here on the left, you can either do it by the pivot or the center. In the code, when you rotate things, it's going to do it by the pivot. So go by the pivot. Plus, that's the more convenient way to do it. So we want to rotate this because in our script, when we tell it to rotate, we want the turret to rotate in a way that looks correct, right? So this looks good here. So this pylon is what we're going to want to rotate. So that's what we're going to target in our script. So let's go ahead. I'm going to close that just to save confusion. I'm actually going to create my own folder here. We're going to do create and then folder. And I'm going to put scripts. And it would be cool if I spelled it correctly. So I can actually click and drag this first. Oh, okay, it's thinking. Gotta let it think. Just thinking about something. Okay, done thinking. We're going to go ahead and drag this first script into this scripts folder. Then I'm going to right click on the folder. I'm going to do create C# script. Is it thinking? What's going on? Okay, there we go. Now this script is going to be for the turret, so I'm going to call it turret. Nice and simple, right? Double click on it. Open it in MonoDevelop. Now we get the same starting methods that we did in the previous script. So the purpose of the script. First thing you want to think about when you first create a script, what is the purpose of this script? It's to control the turret. We're going to attach this to the turret. So this turret here, first of all, let's decide a good position for it. I think actually 0, 0, 0. Be cool. I'm going to do Control A, select that whole field there. 0, tab, 0, tab, 0. And click on it, hit F. If you don't know that, boom. If you already do, good for you. That's very useful. We're going to put it 0, 0, 0. That's a good starting position. Now we're going to click and drag our turret script over to it. Now I'm going to rename this turret actually. If it's highlighted and you click on it again, it'll highlight it in a way that you can rename it. So let's just call it, or no, not main. Let's call it turret 1. Maybe we'll want to add turrets in the future, you know. Right now there's just one, but maybe in the future we'll add more. Okay, turret 1, we have our script added to it. We haven't actually changed the script in a way that will actually make it do something. So what do we want to do? We want to be able to rotate it based on the keyboard. So here's what we're going to do. If this doesn't make sense yet, it will shortly. We learned about variables in the first tutorial. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a speed variable. So I'm going to say float rotate speed, and I'm actually not going to set a value because we're going to do that in the inspector. I'm going to make it public because this is something that we're going to want to change the values and test and make sure that we have it correctly. So we don't actually have to set a value. If you didn't know that, you don't have to set a value right away to a variable. You can always set a value later. In this case it's public. We're going to do it in the inspector. If it weren't public, we could always just declare the variable, and then later on in the script we could set the variable equal to a certain value. And you can do that whether or not it's public or part of it, so it's okay. So we're going to have our speed variable, but even though it's public, I can still set a value to it. Might as well set an initial value. Let's go ahead and just do 1F. Remember, we put the F after it because we're setting a float value. So whatever number you put in, could be a decimal number or not for a float, you put F after it. Now, we want to rotate this, right? Based on a key press of the keyboard. So we're going to have to check every frame if a certain key is pressed. So we're going to use the update method. We're not going to even use the start method, so I'm going to just delete that right now to get rid of any confusion. So let's go to the update method. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to use an if statement. We learned about if statements in the first tutorial because we only want to do it if a key is pressed. So we start our if statement, the word if, open parentheses, and then we're going to say input. Input is the class for input, whether it be keyboard, mouse, whatever. So we're going to do input.getKey. Now if you notice, we have different options. There's get key down, and get key up. Get key will check if the key is pressed. Get key down will check if in that frame that this update method is called, the key was freshly pressed down. Get key up will check if the key was let up. So if we want it to be a continuous thing, as in you press the key and you hold it, and then every frame that you're holding the key you want it to do something, which in this case we do. As long as we hold the key, we want the turret to be rotating in a certain direction depending on which key. We're going to just say get key. So see that this is highlighted, up and down arrow. We can choose which one we want. and then hit the tab. That's what I just did. I hit the tab key. So we're going to say get key, and then we're going to open parentheses because we're going to get which key are we talking about. Let's do key code. See, key code, I hit the tab key again, dot A. And the reason I chose A is because it's often that the directional pad and the ASDW keys are kind of synonymous. So we're going to use key code A, and then we're going to close our parentheses for that, and then close our parentheses for the entire if statement. Hit enter, open brace, enter twice, close brace. We can go back up here. So now what we're saying here is if the A key is being pressed down, we want to rotate it a certain way, actually to the left. So what we're going to do is we're going to say transform.rotate, highlight rotate, hit tab. Now what it takes is a vector 3. Now Euler angles is a fancy math term for the angles that describe a certain rotation. So what we're going to put in here is vector 3 dot right. Now what that is shorthand for 0, 0, 1. In a vector 3 you have 0, 0, 1. So we're going to say vector 3 dot right times rotate speed. Okay, so let me explain here real quick what vector 3.right is. This will make more sense if we actually see it right from the documentation. Sorry, I had to adjust my headset here a little bit. Okay, so if we go to Google and type in Unity scripting, this is very important. Click on Unity scripting here. Search. Type in vector 3. It's going to show up. Vector 3. Now these are static methods. And a static method means you don't have to have an actual vector 3 instantiated yet or created a certain instance. Like in this case, we never created a variable or anything. We're just calling vector 3.right and multiplying the value of that by rotate speed. So right here is the description of vector 3.right. Shorthand for writing vector 3, 1, 0, 0. Okay? So to let that soak in, what we could do is we could say vector 3 right, which is the name, I'm naming it right, equals new vector 3. We're setting the value to the vector 3 type, which is named right, that variable. We could say new vector 3, and then we could look at our documentation, and it's 0, 1, 1. So then we could say 0f, 1f, 1f. Put our semicolon, of course, double check the documentation. It's a 1, 0, 0. The reason I did that is to show you that it's important to look back at documentation and make sure that what you've looked at is correct. And if being honest, I just made a mistake. But that is a good example of why we should look at the documentation if we don't know. So 1f, 0f, 0f, and then we could use this right, and we could actually highlight this and change it out and put right in there if we wanted to. We're not going to do that. I'm going to go back to that and just go ahead and remove that. If I comment that out, remember if I comment it out, the compiler will not see it, because maybe I want to use this for something else. Probably not, but maybe, right? So vector 3.right equals, if I could click on Chrome, it equals this value here. Okay, enough of that, let's move on. Let's go back to mono-develop. The script has not been compiled. I think I put the wrong thing there. We need a semicolon. Okay, so we're going to rotate it by that times the speed. So you can multiply this vector here, which is 1f, 0f, 0f. You can multiply that by a float. It's just something you can do, right? So it's going to take that vector 3 and multiply it by the speed that we set in the inspector, because this is public, so we can change the speed. Right now, being that it's set to 1, it's just going to move at the set value here. Did we set it here? No, it's commented out. The compiler does not see it, but we used vector3.write, which sets it to this value. That's why I'm using this as an example. So it's going to be okay. It's going to move it at that speed, and if that speed is too fast or too slow, we can always change it in the inspector because it's public. So whenever we hit the A key, it's going to rotate it at that speed. So enough talk. Make sure your script is saved. Always hit Control S all the time, every second of every day. Not literally, but do it very often. Save your stuff. If you don't save your stuff, you will lose your stuff, and I have personally lost my stuff before, and it's not fun to lose your stuff. Don't lose your stuff. Okay, so this turret 1, we have the script enabled, right? So when we rotate it, it's going to rotate this whole thing. So why don't we go ahead, I hit Control Z just to put that back to where it was. Why don't we go ahead and play the game and see what's going to happen here exactly. So I said A, right? So if I hit A, it's going to rotate this. Okay, good news, it is rotating it. The bad news, it's not rotating what we want to rotate. So I'm going to pause the game. Not pause, I'm actually going to stop the game. Clearly we attached the script to the wrong place. Now we did this earlier. What do we want to rotate exactly? You can test it by, highlighting a certain part of it and then rotating it with the gizmo here. This is what we want to rotate, this pylon. So if we go here, we're going to right click right here, remove component, go to the pylon. Now there's multiple ways to do this. You could still leave the script attached here and just reference this pylon. We're going to get to that. But right now, let's keep it simple. Let's go to the pylon. We're going to go here, we can hit add component. There's also multiple ways to do this. I'm going to start typing in turret and then hit enter. I typed in turret because the script is called turret. It creates a component called turret. Okay. Now here's our rotate speed. We made it public. We can see it in the inspector. We're going to leave it as 1 first. Okay. So it's attached to our pylon. So it should be rotating the correct thing now. Okay, here we go. We're playing the game. Click on the game. Good news is we're rotating in the correct object. The bad news is it's rotating in the wrong way. Now we can figure out why it's rotating in the wrong way. If we click on pylon here, now if we look over here, we can see which axis is being rotated. It's the x-axis, right? So we want to rotate a different axis. Axis. Okay, we want to say the word correctly first. That's the first goal. So if we know our axes, see here, you see Y is going straight up. So we want to actually rotate it on the y-axis. Now, I already know this, but I'm going to show you real quick. If we go to vector 3, I don't have to search because it's right there. Vector 3, if we see here vector 3.up. Remember our static variables? Vector 3.up is 0, 1, 0. X, Y, Z. That means that Y is in the 1 position. So if we go back to our script, instead of doing right, we're going to do up. Right? Okay. Control S, save it. So now it's going to rotate along the x-axis. Or not the x-axis. The y-axis instead of the x-axis. So we're going to go back to Unity, see our circle, it's compiling. It has been compiled, and we're ready to go. So now let's play our game again. Now if you're not aware of this, any changes you make while the game is playing are not saved for the most part. Once you hit the play button again and stop the game, everything you've changed is not actually saved. There's some exceptions. If you know, we're not going to get into that right now. But basically the point is you can manipulate things however you want in play mode and figure out what it will do, but it won't actually save until you save it while you're not in play mode. Okay, so moving on. Now I'm going to click on my game view. The reason I click on the game view is because that's where the game actually is. This is the game. This up here is just a view of the game, but this is the actual game, you know, quote unquote, if you want to call it that. It's not compiled into a regular game yet, but this is where we do our testing. So I'm going to hit the A key. It's rotating. It's rotating the right thing, and it's rotating in the right direction. Now what if I want to go the other way? Right? If I hit D, it should go the other way? Nope. Nope. We haven't coded that yet. Calm down. We haven't coded that yet. Get a grip. If we do A, it's going to rotate this way, but D does not rotate the other way. Okay, we are making progress though, so let's go back to our script. So what we can do here is we can hit enter underneath this brace. So if the A is pressed down, we're going to do this, right? Else, because if the A is not pressed down, we're going to do something else. So I'm going to hit else, hit enter twice. Put in an opening brace, hit enter twice again, put in a closing brace, and I just hit the up arrow. This is what we're going to do otherwise. I'm going to go ahead and copy this line because it's going to be very similar to that, and then paste, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. That's important. It will save you a lot of time. Now in this case, why don't we just put a negative sign in front of here? Why did I do that? Because we are still going around the same axis, vector3.up, except this time we're going the opposite direction. So negative rotate speed. Negative, right? Meaning the opposite direction. Control S. Go back to Unity, see our circle, compiling, boom. We're ready to go, we're ready to test. Now why is it going by itself? I'm not pressing anything. Why is it going by itself? I'm going to show you why. I put else. I didn't say that we have to hit the D key, I just put else. So that means if we're not hitting the A key, it's going to do the opposite. So if I hit the A key, it's going to go this way. If I don't hit anything, I'm not touching the keyboard right now, it's going to go the other way. That's not what we want though. We want it to happen if we're hitting the D key, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say else if, which means if this statement isn't true, we're going to go down to this. And then we're going to check another condition. So we're going to say input, get key, open parenthesis, key code, dot D. Okay, we're going to put that in. I put two parentheses, one to close this, and then the next one to close the entire if statement. Okay, did Control Z already. We're going to go back to Unity. We're going to let it compile. We're going to restart the game. It's always the safest way, so that you know exactly what's going on. So now, okay, it's not going to rotate on its own. I'm not touching the keyboard yet. Now I'm touching A. It's going to rotate that way. I'm touching D. It's going to rotate that way. Now remember that speed variable that I made? If I go in here, I can change the speed. Let's whoa. Let's start at 3. Okay, the value's 3. Going a lot faster, right? What if I make it 10? Now I'm hitting D. Now I'm hitting A. It's going a lot faster. Rotate speed. Now this is something we might want to change from a script later. Maybe depending on the level, maybe you could say, okay, if your level is high enough, you can change the speed that you can rotate, because that could be helpful, right? You got enemy coming over here, then enemy suddenly coming over here, you know, boom, 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 right? But if you're a noob and you're brand new, you might even do something ridiculous like that, you know, very slow. Oh no, I'm being attacked on the other side. It's gonna take me so long to get over there. Oh no. Oh man, I need help. Oh no. Okay, yeah, you get the idea. You know, speed variable, easily changeable, can be helpful. So now what we want to do is we want to actually create a projectile when you click a certain fire button. Now there's actually a better way to do this part, but we're going to get into that later. Because I really want you to learn how to detect if you're hitting a key and then do an action based on whether or not that's true. Okay? So, if you want to instantiate, now instantiate is a fancy word for, bring into being, create an instance, exactly, of an object. Create an instance, instantiate, You can see, an instance is the root word of instantiate. So you can talk fancy to your friends, say, hey, I know how to instantiate something on a computer. And they'll be like, dude, that's nuts, man. So what we're going to do, you don't have to do it this way, but you can. I would suggest it. Create a folder and call it prefabs. Now a prefab is a pre-made object. We're going to have a folder with all our prefabs in it. Now we're going to go here to this create menu. We're going to create a sphere and we're going to call this, let's just say, bullet. Or actually more specifically, turret bullet. And the reason I'm specific is because we don't know at this point what we're going to create in the future. We might create a different kind of a weapon, a gun that shoots a different kind of bullet. So turret bullet. Now what is this? It's highlighted in blue. Hit the F key, hover over the scene view. Okay, it's right in the middle. Hit the W key, move it over here, then focus on it. It's just a sphere. Calm down. It's just a little sphere. It's going to be okay. Okay, turret bullet. Now, all I want to do here is I want to click and drag this over to the prefabs folder. What that's going to do is create a prefab, which means that this turret bullet here, see how it lights up in blue? We can now use that in script very easily. And that's important because we want to instantiate many of these. We want to create many instances of this. Whenever you want to fire this gun, this is going to come out of it. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I just wanted that to soak in for a second. So let's go back to our script. We want to instantiate this. We don't actually want it right here. The only reason I created it there is so that I could make a prefab out of it, but now we're going to delete it from here as soon as I get it ready. I'm going to leave it here for now because I don't know yet if I'm going to need to attach a script to it. I may not, but I might. We don't know yet. So, what we're going to do is go back to our script and we're going to create a variable for that projectile. So we're going to go, I'm actually going to go up top because usually things that are actual objects I put at top, but that's just the way I do it. So let's do public because we want it to be editable from the inspector. We're going to say public game object, capital G game object, that's important, capital G. See how there's a C next to it? That means this is the game object class, which means we can assign a value of an actual object. Lowercase g is a member variable, which means the game object that the script is attached to. So if I were to reference lower g game object in this case, it would access the turret. Why? Because the script is attached not to that, but to the pylon actually. So it would attach the pylon, which is a child of the turret. That's not what we want in this case. We want it to be a variable that we can assign different values to. So we're going to say game object with a capital G. If that doesn't make sense yet, which is okay at first, I didn't understand it either. It will make sense shortly. So we're going to say public game object, and then let's just say projectile. This is what this weapon projects, right? Semicolon. Because we're going to assign it from the inspector. So if we do that, go back to Unity, let it load. What are we going to see here? See how we have the rotate speed and the projectile? It says none because we haven't assigned it yet. So what we're going to do is grab the prefab, not the one in the scene, the prefab, because we want this to, we want to spawn more than just that one. We want to spawn however many you want to as you hit the fire button. So you get ridiculous and just, get all happy about it and bang on your keyboard. I want to instantiate as many bullets as possible. You want the prefab. Okay, so this is important. You have to highlight this so this shows up, and then click and drag. Don't release the mouse button or it's going to switch. See, if I just click on this, it's going to go and the inspector is going to describe this. But if I click here and then just click and drag this, the inspector is still describing this pylon over here. Now don't release it, don't release your mouse until you get right here. See how it turns blue? That's when you release the mouse. Now it says turret bullet. If I click on this, it will show you. In case you forget which turret bullet is this, it will show you where it is in the project view. Okay? Now the reason that is important is because now this variable is equal to this. Okay? And the reason being is because we dragged it in to the inspector right here. Okay? This pylon is where the script is attached. The script calls for a projectile game object variable, which we assigned right here with this. Okay? That doesn't make sense yet. Watch that a couple more times. Maybe try this in some different contexts. And what I mean by that is just, create more of them and try and assign different things to it. And as you play with it, I think you will understand what it means if you don't already. So what we want to do is create instances of this projectile when you hit a certain key. I'm going to hit enter a couple times. This isn't going to be an else if because I want it to check for this every frame. So let's say if. So every frame it's going to check for this. And if this isn't true, it's going to check for this. But it's also going to check for this no matter what. Whether this is true or not, it's going to check for this. Because this isn't an else if, this is just an if. So we're going to say input dot get key code tab key dot, let's say F for fire, close, enter, open brace, double enter, close brace, up. Now this is what we want. This is where we want to instantiate our projectile. So what we want to do is we want to instantiate the projectile and then we want to send it in a forward motion, right? So here's what we're going to do. Let's just start by doing this. Instantiate. Start typing instantiate and then do this. Now there's different things that you can do for it. Now the most simple one you can do is you can tell it which object it is, right? Now game object type is what we call, it inherits from the object because you can instantiate a lot of different things. But game object is what we want to instantiate right now. So what we're going to do here is we're going to type in projectile right here, okay? And then we want to, it's going to ask us, well, which point do we want to instantiate it from? See how there's different options? This is actually the one that we want right here. You have the position and then you have the rotation. They call it quaternion. That's really fancy. Don't worry about that. I don't really get what that word means either. It's okay. It's just a big word. You can tell your friends, oh yeah, quaternion. I know what a quaternion is. Quaternion, whatever, you know what I mean. Okay, projectile, the position, we're going to say transform dot position. Why are we going to say that? Transform dot position refers to the position of the current object that this script is attached to, which is the turret. We want the object that we're instantiating to start from the turret. Okay, comma, right? Because now we need the quaternion. Now, just memorize this part, quaternion.identity. What that means is, the rotation that the object is saved at in the prefabs folder. So it means it's going to be straight up and down and nothing weird, basically. Just the identity of the object, nothing weird. And then we're going to close parentheses, hit the semicolon, save it, let it compile. Now this turret bullet here, I'm actually going to go ahead and delete that because we don't want that to confuse us. So if I go ahead and play the game, now I can rotate the turret. If I hit the F key, I will notice it instantiates a bunch of them, right? If I look for them, it's going to show up down here at the base of the turret. Now, we're going to get more in depth in this in the next tutorial, but what's important to note is that we have instantiated it. It's instantiating a lot of them because we're using get key instead of a different one that's more specific. Okay, if we were to use get key up, save that, I'll show you the difference there. Because that means it's only going to be called the very frame that you let the key up. So if we go ahead and do this, now at least there's only one. Are they showing up in the right spot? No. We're going to get to that in the next tutorial. They need to show up in the right spot and then they need to actually shoot forward. But we're going to get to that. So don't you worry. It's going to be okay. At least we're instantiating them and I can prove to you that it actually is a projectile. See? That's the prefab that we saved. It's just a sphere. But we're going to get there. I hope you continue to the next tutorial, as things are going to continue to get more and more exciting, and you're not going to be able to stop watching these videos. Okay, everybody have a good night. Thank you for watching. This is Joe with Unity Code Tutorials. I will see you in the next video.